Okay, good morning. So we're starting Siman Reish Hey today. Reish Hey talks about the brachas for yerokos, the brachas on vegetables. Okay, says the Mechaber, Al hayerokos on vegetables, mevarich beirei pri hadama. You make the bracha beirei pri hadama. Vafilu bishlam. Even if you cook them, that doesn't take away the status, and they still have a bracha of a beirei pri hadama. V'chein al peira, v'chein kol peiros v'kidneas, and so too any fruits and kidneas shetovim chaim umuvashalim, which are good whether they're raw chaim umuvashalim or cooked. Either way, mevarich aleihem la'acha b'shulim birchasam haruya lohem kodim shebishul. You make a bracha on them as like you would if you would have eaten them raw. So, for example, you've got a carrot. If you have a raw carrot, you make a ber pradama. You cook the carrot, you still make a ber pradama. However, aval, aval. Kara vasilka. There are some vegetables, kara vasilka, sort of gourds, like courgettes, these sort of things, or kruv and cabbages, or imagine like a courgette. You can't really eat it raw. You can, but it's much better if it's cooked. Kashem Chaim, when you're eating them raw, mevarich shahakol, or la'acha bishulam ber pradama. For those type of fruits, which are much better eaten cooked, you make a ber pradama once they're cooked, but if you eat them raw, you make a shahakol. V'tumi, pirush shumim, garlic, v'karti and leek, pirush purz belaz. Kashem Chaim, when you eat them raw, ber pradama. La'acha bishulam shahakol, and after you cook them, then you make a shahakol. Says the Ramah, because by cooking them, it's considered they've gone worse. It's a deterioration. Even if you cook them with meat and they actually improve, ein hashfach mitzadat. It's not an inherent improvement. It's just that the flavor of the meat has gone into the garlic, and therefore it's improved. So basically the Mechaber is saying, on vegetables you make a ber pradama. The general rule is, it doesn't make a difference if you eat them raw, if you eat them cooked, you make a ber pradama. However, there are some vegetables which are better cooked than raw, and for those select vegetables, you actually make a ber pradama when you eat them cooked. But if you eat them raw, imagine like a gourd or a courgette, which you can't really eat raw, so on that you make a shahakol. And there are some which actually they're better raw, and he gives the example of tumim, of karti, of garlic and of leek, and that you make a ber pradama when they're raw, but you make a shahakal after they're cooked. Okay, let's see the detail, because it's going to have application nowadays. What does that mean? If the example he gave of the Mechaber gives of something which you eat raw, which is actually like a gourd, he gives the example of a karti, which is cabbage. So what if you have coleslaw? And what if you have salads nowadays? You don't cook them, and we all make a ber pradama on them. So we'll see. Okay, it says the Mishnah Berurah Sivkot Aleph. Va'afilu bishlam. So the standard rule is that you make a ber pradama on vegetables, whether they're cooked or whether they're raw. Va'afilu bishlam. Omairi says the Mishnah Berurah Sivkot Aleph. Shetovim lechol ben chaim ben muvashalim. So most vegetables, you can eat them raw, you can eat them cooked, and they're just as good either raw or cooked. So too with most fruits and beans, etc. V'kidneas says the dafka she'oichlin ba'idim lachim. So long as there's still some sort of moisture there. Avokidneas upoilin yeveshim, if they're totally dry. Imagine you go to you buy chulent beans, which are in the packets. They're totally hard. There's no moisture there. Ein darken shel bnei adam la'achan chayin l'mavashalim. The only way to eat those is to eat them cooked. Lefichach le'achan chayin mevarich shahakol. So if a person wants to nash, I don't know if you can even on chulent beans. They're hard things. That is not shahakol ber pradama. That is shahakol. V'ayim b'sim rishtal tzif cotton test Mishnah Berurah. Yosim Chaim. So this is going on the koron, silkon, kruv, which are better cooked than raw. So therefore, when you cook them, therefore you make a ber pradama. But if you eat them raw, you'd make a shahakol. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yosim Chaim, miloshen zeh mashma, da'avshem tovim chaim gamkein. Even if they are edible raw, but it's just they're better. Given shehem yoseh tovim kashem uvashalim, mevarich shahakol, you still make a shahakol when they are eaten raw. However, if the majority of people would eat them, who would happily eat them raw, then you make a ber pradama. Who are roiv b'nei adam? So if you look at 3, the first line, it says v'geda derech roiv b'nei adam Kosev b'shatziyim, which is of course the Mishnah Berurah here in Sif Cotton Gimel at the bottom. Dainu derech b'nei adam sheba isim makom. So this is the minhag in London, the minhag in a certain place. If people would normally eat this thing raw, then that could be a ber pradoma. So that could explain what happens with us, with coleslaw, for example. You're eating a cabbage raw, but we all make a ber pradoma because derech reiv b'nei adam is to eat cabbage in that way. Okay, Sivkot and Daled. So this is going on. This is still the mechaba that there are some vegetables which kashem Chaim Orach shahakol that you can only really eat them when they're cooked. So then you make a ber pradoma. But when you eat them raw, you make a shahakol. Ula acha b'shulam, you make a ber pradoma. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sivkot and Daled. V'hu adin imhem kvushim ameluchim. So imagine courgettes. You can cook them and you make a ber pradoma, or you could pickle them or salt them. That's just another way of cooking. And people would eat them in this way when they're raw. So if you pickle courgettes or vegetables or the cucumbers and things like that, so then you would make a ber pradoma. It's considered another form of bishul. Ufizeh mashekorin kroit, which is kruv, which is cabbage. Kivshon, when you pickle them, v'nasu chamutzim, and they become pickled, mevarich aleim ber pradoma, af kasheim chaim. Even though they're lemaisa, they're raw, you would still make a ber pradoma. Avalim loy kivshon v'achlon chayin shahakol. But if you don't pickle them and you just literally eat them raw, then you would make a ber pradoma. Muvushalin.
Raw cabbage.
What?
So raw cabbage.
So if a person would literally just bite into a raw cabbage, then it would seem from here you make a shahakol. Is it?
Isn't that coleslaw?
So I think it's, I don't know, but I would imagine since derech reiv b'nei adam would eat coleslaw as a salad, that's just the normal way of eating it. So then you'd make a ber pradoma.
So if you're preparing it, someone's preparing it,
and you're nushing a bit, yeah, but that's already, it's got a din of coleslaw already. I think. It could be that a cabbage, reiv b'nei adam would eat cabbage raw. I mean, sometimes you do see it's like just, you make a salad, a fresh salad with lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers. People do add some cabbage in it. You're right, without the coleslaw type of mayonnaise and carrots and things like that. So maybe that's the derech b'nei adam. So I guess it all depends on how the locale eat it. Okay, avalim loy kavshon. If you're not pickled at all, v'achlan chayin, you eat them totally raw. Then shahakol muvushalin. But if it's cooked, ber pradoma. Salatin. Mu'uriv im shemen v'chometz. So here we go. Salads, which you make with oil and with vinegar and all different types of salad dressings. That you make a ber pradoma af b'chayin. Even though it's raw, you make a ber pradoma. V'chol zesh le'ochlam toicha suda. That's of course if you don't eat it in the suda, because if it's in the middle of a suda, which means a bread meal, then you don't make any bracha on it, because the bread covers all the food. V'moichel salatin im basar nasa tofel ha-basar. If, however, you eat the salad together with meat, then it becomes toffel to the basar. So if you look at note number 6, which you all now have, mashmois devarov, the implication of what the Mishnah Berurah is just said is shedafka b'ma'urav shemen v'chometz mevareches berachos haruya. This is a bit what you're saying, Paul. That dafka, when do you make a ber pradoma on salad? When it's mixed in the form of a salad with other dressings and however you make a salad. Achein bizmanenu, but nowadays, Hayra Hagon Chaim Pinchas Steinberg, Shehol v'Ishtan HaMetzias, the reality has changed. Mevarchim ber pradoma kashem Chaim after le'etarvus. It's your point exactly. You could make a ber pradoma even without any combining it with other things. You would still make a ber pradoma on salads. That's b'shem Chaim in Gezer with regard to carrots. Shetolim derech b'nei adam ba'isam makom la'ach l'chai. So if people in that place would eat carrots raw, then fine. Nowadays we certainly do. You can have like carrot sticks and things like that. People certainly eat them raw. Okay, it's interesting. He says if you eat it with the meat. I think nowadays, it's interesting. I remember once eating with the Dayan. We were guests. We were guests there for Shabbos, I forget, and he was very. I don't know if you remember, if you ever ate there, and you remember, but he always had like a different plate for a salad. He didn't like the salad with the meat. He had a separate round, which I think is the correct way of doing it. You have a salad plate, like you have a bread plate, you have a salad plate. Most of us don't. Most of us, I think, have it just on the same plate. You have a salad and meat and whatever together. But again, it depends on the thing. The Mishnah Berurah, he seems to be, living like the Mishnah Berurah, like that. But either way. But I think nowadays our minhag seems to be you make a Rebbe Adama on all types of salads. That seems to be the minhag olam. If you mamish have something raw, you bite into a gourd or something, which that raw, then you make a shahakal. Okay, let's carry on. So Sif Cotton Hay is going on the next bit of mechaba. So this is talking about the second category, which is tume, which is garlic or karti or leek, which is kashem chaim. When you eat them raw, you make a beper adama, and then after cooking, it seems to deteriorate, and then you make a shahakal. So it says in Mishnah Berurah, Sif Cotton Hay, kashem chaim beper adama. So leeks and garlic, when you eat them raw, you make a beper adama. Kasu achreinim the dafka b'shumim rakim. That's only if they're very soft garlic. For oz derech bnei adam lechol chaim, people would eat them raw. Avol shumim shehezkinu, but garlic which have become aged, shem charifim moed, which are very strong, ve'ein roin nachlan chaim below pas, and you can't really eat them straight, i.e. without bread. Im ochel mevarach shahakol, because that's not the normal way of eating it. V'chein bebetzolim, and so too with onions. Din hachi, dim ochlim rachim beper adama, his kinu shahakol. It's interesting. I know I've got a friend who lives in Eretz Yisrael, and in their family, way back on Friday night, their standard, when they have their chicken soup, they'd have the bowl of soup, and next to it there'll be a plate with a raw onion, a whole raw onion. And they would, I think it's a Hungarian thing? Onions are makov, yeah. But, they would bite into the onion, a raw onion, and then they'd have some soup and bite into the onion. That was the way they'd have their chicken soup. Now, that's exactly this. That's I don't see other people do this. This is quite an unusual thing, I think. But they would, you would make a ber pradama on that if it wasn't part of a suda, of course. But if you're eating it stam, just chicken soup with the onion, and you're eating the onion, that's how you do it. So long as it's a bit moist or whatever, then you make a ber pradama. The second line, yeah, I'm halfway through the second line. Even if they're very soft, unless and this is clearly his practice. So if the minhag in the Medina is to eat them without bread, soft, then you make a beper adama. Avol, says the Mishnah Berurah, no one eats garlic and onions raw, even if they're soft, below pas without bread, ein mevarachim el shahakol. So it says in Mishnah Berurah, I don't see people eat onions and garlic raw, and therefore you would make a shahakol. V'chein mesaded b'nishmas adam levarach shahakol. V'ayin shom oid b'shai tshuva shekosov d'em mevushalim, if they're cooked, bein shum b'tzalim rakim, or vein sheskinu le'olim ein mevarach el shahakol, v'afilu bishlim in basa, even if you cook it with meat. Okay, so it very much depends on the practice of the locale. Okay, Vov, Sif Cotton Vov. So this is going on the Ramah, that after you cook these types of vegetables, you make a shahakol, because once you cook them, they deteriorate. The machash v'nishtanu l'griusa, they deteriorate. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Cotton Hay, Sif Cotton Vov, u'masha me'achronim duhadin bebetzalim uvushalim. So too with cooked onions. V'chein b'yerek shekorin zerzich or mashekorin train. I'm not 100% sure what that is. If you sort of just cook them in water, if you just boil an onion, then it sort of deteriorates. It goes worse. But if you fry an onion or you do something with the onion where it actually enhances it, then for sure it retains its status of ber pradoma. I remember my Zayda used to make his go-to dish was egg and onion. So he'd fry onions. That was the Cholamoid Pesach. That was the special breakfast he would make. So he would fry onions, and then it was delicious. And then you add egg, whatever. So if you're enhancing the onion, then it certainly retains its ber pradoma status. Zayin misadatz when I'm bachreinim shekasu v'hoim mevasheli rokas in bosa or shetignu mishum. If you're frying or cooking vegetables with meat, where you certainly want to eat the yerokas by themselves as well, so that would be a good example. So if my Zayda would make egg and onion, and he would make fry a lot of onions and add the egg, then if I want to eat some of the onions on its own because I enjoy that, then I would make a ber pradoma, because that's enhancing it. Even if I were to just boil the onion, cook the onion, and it would actually go bad, but I'm not doing it, just in that way. They're going to get some sort of taste from the meat, and they're going to improve. kavir kasaboso, and then you would make the bracha of the boso. Ulefiza im tigen betzolim b'shem, and here you go. If you fry onions in oil, oibechema with batza kadei lashbichon, then mevarach aleim ber priadoma. Then you would certainly make a ber priadoma. Because the onions have improved. That can be the ikka. Just if you look at number 11, interestingly, he says, what about onion soup? What bracha do you make on onion soup? So he says, also you fry onions, that's how you make it. Even though there's a lot of water and a lot of other spices, so you've got onion soup, and you can see clearly there's onions in them, even though it's 90% water and 5% spices, whatever, and there's only 5% onions, let's say, but still that's the distinctive feature of the soup, and therefore you would make a ber pradoma. So the bottom line is that when it comes to yirakas, so far in Sif Aleph, you make a ber pradoma, whether they're raw, whether they're cooked. If they really cannot be eaten raw, cannot be eaten cooked, then perhaps you would make a shahakol. Okay.
Sure.